All right, so thank you everyone for being here tonight. We've got a couple folks that are sick, but folks will just catch up with the recording. So I know we're running a little bit late, so I'm just going to turn it over right away to Monica and Sylvia, and you can just let me know what you need.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Sylvia.
Oh, I was saying thank you. We would love to start with introductions. You should have received our agenda for today and the PowerPoint. Do we want to launch that? All right. 1 second. Thank you. Well, I'm Sylvia Flowers. I'm a member of the Alma Advisory Group. I am Monica's number 2 on this search, so I will be working closely with you all over the course of the search process, and excited for our work together.
Thank you, Sylvia. My name is Monica Santana Rosen. It's a pleasure to meet you all today. I'm the founder and CEO of Alma Advisory Group. I'm going to be leading this search and happy to share more about Alma and our process as we go. Would love to hear introductions from everyone in the room. If you could just share a little bit, share your name with us, share your connection to the Portland public schools community, and anything else you want to share with us about your hopes for the search. And we'll start with the people that are all in the room together.
So I'm Sarah Lentz. My pronouns are she, hers. And currently the board chair and an at-large representative. And I have a 7.5-year-old at Ocean Avenue Elementary School.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, my name is Betsy Baskimeshi, and I work as a family and community engagement specialist, and I work with the Spanish speakers in the district in the multilingual and multicultural department.
Thank you, Betsy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Burke. I'm the Director of Pre-Kindergarten Education for the district. I'm also a Portland resident and parent of 3 PPS students.
Thank you. And was that Lissa or Alyssa? I didn't quite hear. Alyssa, thank you. That's what I thought. Anyone else in the room with you there, Sarah?
Yes, I'm sitting over on this side. Let's see if it swings over here. I'm Barbara Stoddard. I am the outgoing HR director. I'm still doing some work for the district, but I've stepped away from that role fairly recently. I have 2 grown kids who went through the system, so I live in Portland and I'm very familiar with the school system, and have worked with the district been in this role or that role for 7 years, and started in 2013 doing some teacher evaluation work.
Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else in the room with you all?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, great. Mr. Youssef, do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you. My name is Youssef. I am a Portland at-large school board member, serving this committee, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Youssef. Carrie Dowdy?
Thank you. Yes, my name is Carrie Dowdy, she, her, hers. I am a Portland resident. I have 3 children of my own who have gone through the Portland public school system. I was an elementary classroom teacher in Portland for 27 years, and I'm currently the president of the Teachers Union. It is very nice to meet you, Monica and Sylvia. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Emily, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Emily Figdor. I'm the District 2 representative on the board, and I have 2 kids in our school system, a 6th grader at King and a 10th grader at Deering.
Thank you so much. And is that Niala?
Thanks, Monica. And it's Nylat.
Sorry, Nyla.
No, it's okay. Yeah, so I am the at-large or one of the at-large board members in the committee, and I am an alumni or Portland Public Schools alumni, and I'm actually wearing my Deering lacrosse jersey today. But I also taught some extracurricular classes for some programming at Portland Public Schools.
Thank you, Nyla. And we've got Kathleen, who just joined us from the Alma team. Kathleen, we're just going through introductions.
Awesome. It's so great to meet all of you and hear your stories on lacrosse. What a great start to this meeting for sure, Nyla. Appreciate that. Glad to be here tonight.
So Kathleen is a member of the Alma team. She's going to be supporting with a lot of the content development, helping us create our job profile, helping us create our interview tools and materials throughout the process. So that's Kathleen. Welcome, Kathleen. I think we missed
Matt. I think we missed Matthew.
Oh, my goodness. There you are at the top of my screen. Sorry, Matthew.
It's okay. Matthew Winch. I'm a parent of 3 children, 2 of which are here in Portland schools. One is a senior at Portland High School. The other is a 4th grader at Lyseth Elementary. And our 8th grader is out of district.
Excellent. I notice a trend of a lot of people with 3 children, and I also have 3 children, so I relate. Being outnumbered by your kids. Welcome. Thank you. And Sarah, will you let us know if anybody else joins in the room?
Yes, will do.
Okay, perfect. Sylvia, I'm going to hand it back to you as we talk a little bit more about Alma and walk through our slides here.
Thank you. So we had the pleasure of meeting with the board on Tuesday to introduce ourselves, and we're excited to get started with you all today. You have the founder on the line. So Monica Santana Rosen founded Alma Advisory Group 6 years ago, and we're really a mission-driven consulting organization that got its start helping school systems think about how to best attract, hire, inspire, and retain great staff, and really helping them to create the conditions where people can do their best work. A lot of that work that we did on developing robust teacher pipelines and leader pipelines naturally fed into this search practice work. And that is how we got involved with executive search and really, want to focus on building capacity and creating processes that mitigate bias and allow for candidates to show up as their best selves throughout our processes. This is a snippet of the team that will be working with you all over the course of the next few months. Monica, me, Venus Velez will be leading our community engagement work. She will be on site with us later in the month. Nita Lasapunko does a lot of our data analysis and a lot of our sourcing work. And Naja Thompson is our recruiting specialist. He does a lot of our outreach and sourcing work as well. And then you also met Kathleen, who is an awesome writer and helps us really bring to life and tell the story of Portland in ways that allow us to go out and sell this position. So our next portion is really thinking about our shared purpose and our shared understanding of the role. We went over this, next slide, the shared purpose with the board on Tuesday. And so we got some feedback from the board members on the goal and purpose, and we want to share it with you to see what you would add, what else we should consider. So I'll pause and give you an opportunity to read these and think about if we've captured the essence of what we want to accomplish in this search. So our goal is to recruit, screen, and select the next transformative superintendent of Portland Public Schools. And our purpose is to lead a transparent superintendent search process guided by equitable input of the PPS community, including historically marginalized students and staff, and designed to mitigate bias at every step of the way.
Just want to add that the words that are in red here, we actually gave kind of a general template to the board on Tuesday, and these were the things that they wanted to, these were the ideas they wanted to add. So they haven't had a chance. They talked a lot about it. And then, so for the board members here with us, you might comment if you think we've captured it. It's not final, but you're going to learn a lot more about the role this committee plays. And so we're hoping that you can look at this with us and help us refine it even more, make sure we're capturing the right ideas for what we should be trying to accomplish with this process.
Any thoughts, reactions?
I welcome folks that weren't at the board meeting to speak up. I think probably board members are holding back a little bit because we've already done this exercise. So please feel free to add your thoughts.
I'll just speak up and say that when I read it last night, it read really succinctly and clearly, and feel like it really states what I think our combined goals of this committee are, to do just as the statement suggests.
Thank you, Matthew.
I think I saw Carrie give a thumbs up there. Yeah, great. Thank you.
I was supporting exactly what Matthew said. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments? And love to hear now, once we hear from everyone in the group too, if there are any reactions from board members, having reflected on the conversation, if you think the ALMA team also kind of lifted up some of those big ideas from the group's conversation as well.
Yeah, I think it incorporates most or all of the thoughts and themes that came up at the board meeting.
Yeah, I have those feelings too. Sorry. Yeah, I have those feelings too. I spoke up about a couple of these and I feel really good about how it was able to fit into this. Because I was like, ooh, a lot of the things we were saying I felt like would make it really long, but y'all kind of I think y'all really got like a good grasp of what we were trying to say. And I think this kind of puts out a very specific need, which I really appreciate. So thank you.
Emily, you have your hand up?
I have one question, which is just, I've found that sometimes people really struggle over the term PPS community. They don't know who that includes and who it doesn't include, or they think perhaps I guess my experience is that people think that it doesn't include them when I would just, like, for me, absolutely. So I just, that's the one question I have of whether we want to say the Portland community. So, just again, just raising that question as a result of reaction I've heard to using the PPS community.
I really like that comment, Emily. This is Barb speaking. Because when I read this too, I like that we've called out students and staff, but I generally like to think about it as stakeholders, which is just a more all-inclusive term for anybody in the community, which could be staff, students, families, people who don't have kids, who have grown kids, because I do think that we do want input from all of those stakeholders.
Yeah, there were lots of nods in the room.
Yeah.
Great. So I updated it in real time. Our purpose is to lead a transparent superintendent search process guided by equitable input of the Portland community, including historically marginalized students and staff, and designed to mitigate bias every step of the way.
Maybe we could add residents. So it could say including historically marginalized residents, students and stuff.
Residents?
I feel kind of indifferent about that because I feel like we do want to prioritize the Portland Public School community, and we do want to center their needs since they're the district that will mostly engage with the superintendent, and they're the folks that are going to be experiencing all of these things, a transformative, equitable, including at least somebody that has the tie to the school system would have the capacity to have input into what we're doing. But I feel like when we start to try to make this like and I don't mean to, I guess, feel biased, but it's not really, because we're trying to be equitable and we're trying to ensure that marginalized voices are heard. I think when you include Portland community, it's essentially making space for like very conservative white people to be centered in that space as well. And I guess you can, maybe that's not the right language to use, but I just feel like it would be best to center the school community because they're the ones that are going to be having this transformativeness or would be centered in the aspect of equitable work. I just feel like when you involve the rest of the community, then they want the space to incorporate like their needs of a superintendent when they're not going to be engaging with that superintendent. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But
If the parentheses are only going to reflect the primary stakeholders, that at the very least, it would be helpful to add families to the list.
yeah.
It can be part of the historically marginalized section. You could say community members or families or something like that.
Yeah.
Matthew?
Yeah, I was just in sort of supporting what Nyla was stating. I was thinking of just wordsmithing instead of really changing the focus, maybe highlighting by input of Portland community, comma, which includes historically marginalized students, families, and staff, or something of, use a term of art that obviously says that this is a search involving everybody in the community, but we are focusing our goal is to really drill into the historically marginalized students, families, and staff. So I just wonder if which includes doesn't twist that in the right way to sort of comport with what Nyla was suggesting.
And Emily added here in the comments, while centering, that maybe with which includes as an alternative.
Yeah, I have no preference on the wordsmithing, but I think what Emily and I and Nyla are all suggesting probably is the same thing.
Could we do, sorry, just before you change, sorry, and I don't mean to make you guys change so much. Maybe we could do input of the Portland Public Schools community, including historically marginalized students, families, staff, stakeholders, and partners. Because then that would include folks that are that we collaborate with and that we are in partnership with.
And Nyla, what did you think of centering instead of including, while centering?
I like centering, but that's just me. Sorry.
I like being more specific. I like being more explicit, actually, is what I want to say. So I feel like centering is a very powerful choice there. And I think it speaks more to the point you were making earlier.
Yeah. With that.
Matthew, was your hand raised?
No, I never lowered it, but I was just noticing, I think while centering on, it's,
There you go. Great. Any other comments?
I just would add if we're using Portland community, maybe do we need the partners? Maybe Portland community will cover the partners.
Yeah, that's where I was saying we could put PPS instead of community. So Portland Public Schools community. I don't know. I'm getting into it's I'm like, I feel like we're getting repetitive now, but I think where I was coming from was specifically Portland Public Schools, and then while centering on historically, that would say like we're centering the students, the staff, and the families that are marginalized, but also the community members that are in partnership with them. So like Portland Public School community as a whole, and then the red line. But I don't know, how do folks feel? Portland communities and then deleting the partners, or just Portland?
So Nyla, I was going to suggest input of the Portland community while centering on Portland Public Schools, historically marginalized students, families, staff.
Okay. Yeah.
So that you subset it, and then we can take out stakeholders and partners, which seems to, I don't know if stakeholders and partners are really necessary. I think at the end it was staff.
Yeah.
It feels more, it seems to cover everything for me, and it still simplifies the statement.
Yeah, so ending with staff instead of partners.
Yeah. So families and staff, no partners. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in agreement in the room as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Great. We're great. Thank you. And Nyla, no worries at all about pushing the thinking. We always get to a better place. So we're very happy about it. No, nothing to worry about there. Okay, great. I think we have an excellent statement here. And this really gives us a lot, like every time we meet, we'll be grounded in this as our shared purpose, because the work is going to be challenging as we go. At some point, it's going to be difficult. And we always want to come back to what is our shared purpose, both as a committee and then when the board is meeting for the board as well. So thank you for that. All right, back to you, Sylvia.
Hey, so one of the things we want to spend some time on is talking through the role of the board versus the role of this search committee. And as we went through this on Tuesday, we really wanted to make sure that the board has clarity on its role, and we want the search committee to have clarity on its role. So you can read through these slides, but we really see the board as setting the direction for the search. They will review the community feedback. They will approve the job profile. They will ensure that we are reaching out and communicating with all stakeholders. They will also help us with any media and any crisis response as we go through this process. We hope that they will actively participate in the aspects of design, interview, and selection. They ultimately do hire the superintendent, so they will make the final offer and selection. We see the board meeting monthly versus we see this committee meeting twice per month. And this committee is really helping us to identify key stakeholders, making sure that we've done a thorough job of engaging the community throughout this process and supporting our outreach, making sure that we are are leveraging our community partners, making sure that we're sharing the information about our community gatherings far and wide, really helping us think through how to reach reach broadly. We want this group to provide feedback on the job profile and job description. This group will also help us think through interview activities and questions. We see that this group would serve as one of the community interview panels during the finalist stage. And we could see that this group would meet with the board before the board's final determination. And again, we think this group is the group that meets more regularly, would work closely with us, meeting twice per month. And we have kind of a key activity slide that we can share next. But
Yes.
Any thoughts? Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to add that the board discussed this on Tuesday, and they really had strong consensus that this committee, they felt, was well-rounded, had a greater degree of experience and connection to what the community is looking for than the board has. So they really want the search committee to play a leading role in this process. So we're actually expecting to meet with the search committee more frequently than we're expecting to meet with the board, and having this committee really begin the process of designing things, which then the board would review and refine and sign off on. So just wanted to add that as well here.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Can you hear Alyssa okay?
We can.
Okay. Wasn't sure I was close enough last time. I just am wondering, when we had met previously, it sounded like we would do interviews, at least at the initial stage, and then present a final candidate for further review by the board. It sounds like that has shifted. And so I'm just wondering if you can explain like what the primary round of interviewing looks like, and if it's different than what we had initially anticipated and where the change occurred.
Yeah, so we weren't part of those initial conversations. So I'll ask if any of the board members want to speak to that. We haven't yet designed the steps of the screening process, so we will have time to discuss that. What I would say, working right now with a district that previously had a committee vet candidates before the board had the opportunity to review, is that our experience is that we really think you need at least the board members to be making that decision. They might do it alongside the committee, but not have the committee make screening decisions on behalf of the board, because it allows everyone to get very far down the line before the people who have to make the ultimate decision in the process get to see candidates. So I know we have board members in this group, and it's definitely something we can discuss with the board. We think it's better to, whatever this, typically Alma does the first screen. We have to decide what we want the different steps in the process to be, but we think the board really needs to be involved at any stage where you're narrowing candidates. At a minimum, they should be involved. So that's what I would say to that, but open to discussion from the group. It's not something we've had the opportunity to discuss with the board yet. I don't know, Sarah, if you were a part of those earlier discussions or any other board members can comment on that.
I think I was under the impression that the initial screenings and like first round interviews to really narrow the pool of candidates down would be done by Alma. And then we would come in and be in those next rounds. Like we wouldn't get all the way to a finalist without being in those like middle rounds. That was my impression. But other board members with other information, please share your thoughts.
Emily?
Alyssa, I had the same question at our board meeting this week when this came up. We were talking about rules, and I looked back at the resolution that the board passed establishing this committee in order to remind myself exactly what that resolution said. And the resolution didn't, was fairly broad, in fact. So I think I kind of assumed as it sound, and as it sounds like you're saying, that there would be more of a role for this committee in the interviewing, but I'm hearing, I want to build off of Alma's expertise, and the case that Monica's making makes a lot of sense to me. And I want to ensure that we're set up for, we're ultimately set up in the best way. So I share, I share your question, and, I'm definitely interested in talking about it more. But I do want to also, build off of the experience that Alma has and their recommendation.
Yeah, I didn't. That resolution public. Can we get a copy of the resolution? Is it on the website?
Yes, I can get that to you.
Okay.
And was that Barbara? Were you coming in there?
No, that was not me.
Oh, sorry.
So I hadn't meant it as a point of contention, just a question, because it's not how I initially understood the process. So good to have clarification about it.
Yeah, and we're going to have opportunities to talk a little bit more about the process and finalize that. So we'll have more time to discuss what it looks like and what different roles are for the committee and the board in that screening process. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Okay, great.
All right. So why don't we go through the timeline? So here is a high-level estimate of our timeline. We are at the beginning of January, and we have already begun planning for stakeholder input. We have worked with the team to identify January 30th and 31st as the days when Alma will be on site. We will be working on our community gatherings as well as our stakeholder interviews and focus groups throughout that visit. And then we have February 2nd as our day for virtual community gathering. We are also, of course, behind the scenes thinking about candidates who might be good fits. We're starting some of our initial sourcing work and beginning some of our early recruitment and brainstorming on potential candidates. We anticipate that we will finalize the job profile after we complete the community meetings and community gatherings. So we anticipate that would occur in the early part of February. Hopefully we'll quickly turn around the survey and the feedback from the community gatherings. We will share those back to you all and to the board. And Kathleen will work her magic into creating a job profile that really lifts up what is most important, what those key themes are, and what rows for folks in the community. From there, we will post the position that will we will of course cast a wide net. We think that March is kind of when the heavy recruitment and screening happens. That will be when we start first round interviews. And ideally we would get to finalist round by April, and could get to a point where we are recommending a candidate by the end of April, early May. And here's how we see some of that. If we think about our meeting cadence of meeting twice a month, today's meeting is to really confirm the timeline, think about our meeting time for us to, also time for us to discuss community engagement, what will happen at the end of January, who we should be talking to, getting the information about that from you all. Our next meeting, we want to have you all give us feedback on our community engagement questions. We should be ready to launch our survey here in the next week or two. Ideally, this question came up last on Tuesday of whether or not the survey would be launched before the end of the month, and we think it can be. You all have already started to give us feedback, so we think we can finalize the survey pretty quickly and get it posted by mid-month. And in that next meeting, we'll really begin to think through some of the steps of the screening and selection process. We'll report back to this group once we complete our community engagement and share the job profile, and again, begin the design of the interview process, questions and activities. We'll want everyone who's a part of the interviews to go through our anti-bias training. So anticipate mid-February. We'll make sure that the entire committee as well as the board are trained in our anti-bias training. And then March, April will be heavy interview times, and that will be probably a significant time commitment for those of you who are participating in the interviews. And again, ideally, we would get to the debrief stage and selection by the end of April. Any questions?
I would just add that we're working very closely with Grace to work on communications and are trying to work in tandem with her and the Multilingual Center just to make sure that everything is aligned, and we're giving lots of time and space to make sure we're engaging all parts of our community.
Yusuf?
Yes, thank you. For the final interviews, just want to understand the way it works. Are you finalizing one candidate or several candidates that we will choose from?
Yeah, so we'll spend some time in our next meeting thinking through the selection process, but typically the finalist stage is 2 or 3 finalist candidates. So you all will narrow your pool from the first round, which is conducted by Alma. Then there will be another round where the district, this committee or board will engage with candidates. And then we'll decide how many steps we want to have, whether there's 3 total steps or 4 total steps. Those will be some of the decision points that we'll be going through in our next meeting. But at each stage, we're narrowing the pool. Ideally, we would recommend 2 to 3 finalists sort of come to that final round and engage with a broad group of stakeholders. It's a great question. Monica, I saw you come off mute. Anything you would add?
Thank you. I think you answered it just fine. So I was starting to think about the numbers, Yusuf, just to give you a sense of it. It does kind of vary, but if we have let's say there are 3 rounds of screening with Alma doing the first, you might have a semifinalist round that has somewhere between, anywhere as low as 4 up to 8 candidates at the semifinalist round. And then from there, you'd narrow to 3. You might do a step before semifinalists where you can see as many as, 8 to 12 candidates, and then narrow those to 4 to 6, and then narrow those to 3. So just to put some numbers behind what Sylvia was saying to give you a sense of the volume that we might be talking about.
Yeah, as we start working through, we'll be wanting to block time on calendars and really protect time for these interviews once we sort of make some of those decisions. A lot starts to happen once we launch the job posting and we begin the screening process. That we'll have a better sense of what the applicant pool looks like, where we might need to do additional sourcing, where we might do more outreach. We'll be monitoring the pool to ensure that it is diverse, includes, aligns with the job profile and things like that. All right, well, let's talk about our activities for community input.
I've got one more question, Sylvia.
Sylvia, I'm sorry. Can I ask one more question about this before we move on?
Yep.
I'm just curious to understand more about the placement of the anti-bias training in the order of the activities. Just wondering what the content is like and if there's anything that we would be doing ahead of that training that we might actually benefit from training on in order to do better.
Yeah, so we've done it a variety of ways. We have done training with the board or a search committee earlier in the process. And depending on how we design the finalist interview process, we may be coming back and doing additional training. Typically, the anti-bias training is about 2 hours, and we may decide to use one of our meetings to do it at an earlier stage as well.
Sylvia or Kathleen, do you want to talk a little bit about what's included in the training? Kathleen, do you want to talk about the anti-bias training?
Yeah, I would love the chance to do so. And thank you so much for the question about where it's placed. That is so indicative of the commitment of this committee to do the very best work. We love that. And this is actually one of the most key components of our work with the committee. And as Monica mentioned, every person who's going to interact with candidates at any level is going to have access to this training in some form or fashion. So the most important people who have access to it is this group right here, along with board members. So anyway, you'll have the opportunity to get a better understanding of how bias emerges in interview processes. We ask we hope compellingly irritating questions to get people to think about in their own experiences as being on either side of the interview table, what their experience has been with questions, and how even the most basic questions that we ask people, sometimes very innocently, can lead to the exposure of different biases. So we begin with an inclusive activity where you'll have the opportunity. I don't want to give too much about the training away because it's
no, don't give away the
activity. But I promise that I won't, Monica. But you'll have an opportunity to just do some mock engagement, I guess I'll say, and really the purpose of the training is truly to just share some historical insight around bias in general, and then to give people, and what we've realized is it's not very often that people are caused to think about these things. Like, unless you're asked these questions, there wouldn't really be any reason to think about them as to borrow Monica's word from earlier, as explicitly as you'll have the opportunity to do in this training. But above all, it's just an open conversation that serves to create accountability for later in the process when we are debriefing candidates. And I go back to the countless debriefs that we have facilitated, which is another hallmark of Alma's process, is really purposefully debrief facilitation, so that we're helping committees think very openly, very inclusively about candidates that are demonstrating the competencies that are part of the job description. And so it's all about adhering to the competencies and being honest with each other about what our biases are, and then ultimately being really accountable to what those are, and being open to calling each other on it sometimes when those pop up later in the process. So that's a little bit about it. It's really just a conversation that is framed by those questions that we don't often have the opportunity to reflect on.
Yeah, thanks for providing more information about that. I appreciate it. I know it was one of the things that we were so excited about working with your group in terms of being able to provide for all of us. I'm wondering, given how you described it, if we might be able to do that before we begin designing the interview questions, just so that we go into that process all being, on the same page and having a shared understanding of what we're trying to achieve with that. Is it possible to switch that order, or is that not conducive in some way to what you're trying to do?
That's a great question. Let's go back and think about it. Part of the issue is that we are designing questions for the first round in the process, which is likely to begin earlier in February, which Alma will be doing, but we could do maybe a little bit of both. So we'll take that back as a team to think about it. It's super valid that it's helpful to have the anti-bias. We think about the anti-bias training as most helpful before you interact with candidates. But I think it's helpful to think about how that kind of training is helpful, even when you're thinking about the questions that you want to ask. So we'll give it some thought and come back to this group in our next meeting with how best to do that. And the point we definitely will do no matter what is to ensure that you have guidance about how to design interview questions and activities. And we're working with you to ensure that you're mitigating bias with each of your questions as well from the start. So thank you for that.
I want to underscore the thanks for that question. I can say in the many of these conversations we've been honored to have, I think that's the first time that's come up in that way. So really, really appreciate that dedication to getting a jump start on that part of the process. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks.
All right. We're going to talk a little bit about our activities for community input. The first thing that is happening is really the survey that we want to get out to the community. You all have a draft of the survey now. We'll want to finalize that and get your feedback as soon as possible. So that we can get it translated. As Sarah mentioned, we're working with Grace and her team to make sure that the survey is translated and accessible. And we'd love to get that out to the community before January 30th. So ideally, if we could have your feedback, I think I put on there by next Wednesday, then we can send a final version out, and then we can get Grace and her team to translate it, and then we ideally could get it launched either the week of the 16th or the week of the 23rd. We like to have the survey open for at least 2 weeks. We want to have it open through our visit and maybe through the first week of February, ideally. We also have the community gatherings that I mentioned. We will be on site on January 30th and 31st. We want to have 2 in-person meetings in the evenings for parents and community members. And then we will be working with you all to have focus groups and interviews during the day of our visit, so that we're meeting with staff members, we're meeting with teachers, we're meeting students, and other key partners throughout our visit. So we really want to maximize our time while we're there on site. We also have a 3rd community gathering planned for February 2nd, which will be virtual. The structure of those gatherings is we typically start together in whole group, and then we want to break out into smaller roundtables or breakout groups where people have the opportunity to speak and share in a more intimate setting. And then the interviews and focus groups, as I mentioned, will occur during the day while we're on site. And if we can't get to everybody, we'll still protect time to do some virtually afterwards, but we want to make sure that we're maximize all of our time. Any questions?
So, hi. So on the community gathering part, so like you guys, we're gonna be working with multilingual as far as interpretation for those focus groups as well, right? So I get that correct?
And hopefully focusing on the in-person ones,
Okay.
so that they can use the headsets.
So we can do it the UN style.
Yes, we would.
And then could we maybe, did you share the survey, like what's going on so far, maybe with Grace? Because look, I'm looking at it. I haven't made all my comments, but some of the language is a little heavy for us to be able to translate it. So it might be good to share it with Grace and the rest of my colleagues. So, you know, so we can see how to handle some of that wording, because it does not all translate very friendly. And especially my community, there's, a huge literacy issue, so.
Yeah, we'll also have many families who don't have email addresses.
Exactly.
Or who need interpretation rather than a written survey.
Yeah, my community with the email, we're not gonna get a lot of responses on this, but we could also do audio survey. That's what I'm doing. We've done that here with School Messenger where we send the audio survey.
How many languages does multilingual translate?
Oh, let me think. Spanish, French. I'm gonna give you the major ones that we do: Portuguese, Arabic, Somali, Spanish, French, Vietnamese. What am I missing? Those are the major ones that we try, because we don't do the other ones like Swahili or Lingala. Kinyarwanda, we don't translate of those. Because we don't have a lot of people who read those.
I mean, well, so could we contract with a translating, like an actual translating organization, because they do more heavy, like heavily based content. Like when I worked for the city, we use a translating organization that was able to translate like a whole booklet, just because I think it's also important to get some of those folks that multilingual doesn't have access to.
I don't think the issue is that multilingual doesn't have access. I think the issue is that multilingual might do better to try to access people without using any written language. So if we could think of a way to survey people that was just using verbal exchange rather than written text, even text that have been translated, that would be more effective for some populations.
I can't tell you.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking if they can't translate for Lingala, Congolese, and like Acholi, some of the other stuff, then that's leaving.
Acholi they can.
Okay, yeah, for that. But I'm saying that would be leaving out a certain community if they can't translate at all, even verbally.
And I think, Nyla, I think with that, like, you know, when we do intake at multilingual, what we have noticed, so a lot of our families that do speak some of the other dialects, like Lingala, for example, will usually also be French or Portuguese, or like Kinyarwanda, same thing, like some of those other ones. I think you're 100, like, we can definitely handle the major ones. I don't know. And traditionally, that's what we'll do, because a lot of our, Kinyarwanda and Swahili and stuff, a lot of them will also speak French and Portuguese, and that's why we do those translations. And I think we can handle, my point was more, and I'm thinking selfishly of the Spanish speakers, because that's who I serve, is I know the literacy rate, the literacy is a very big issue in the community. Aside from English, even literacy in our, in the native language. So I do think we do have to find some alternative way that is not written language for them to do. So.
Thank
Yeah, maybe we could do like a YouTube video that's translated.
Well, that's a good idea.
As long as we
Yeah.
have a way to actually capture.
Yeah. We'll get creative.
I have a question. I'm curious with the one-on-one interviews, what's the selection process for who will participate in those?
Yeah, so we have a spreadsheet that's out, and I think we sent it to this group too, right, Sylvia? Or if not, we will after this meeting, where we're asking for the committee and the board to share with us individuals that are community leaders that you think could help us spread the word about these community gatherings that we're having. And in that group, there are particular partners, leaders that we think would be good to have individual conversations with. So, for example, Carrie, your role would normally be someone, either you and your team or just you yourself as someone who represents the teachers union that we would want to meet with individually. That's the kind of a role that might have a one-on-one interview. Sometimes they're partners or funders. Sometimes they're district leaders like the cabinet members reporting directly to the superintendent. So we'll make those decisions with you all and with the board to see where it makes sense to have specific interviews versus focus groups. One of the issues, and I think we have a slide coming up where we say one of the issues is that our time is limited. So we have to be very strategic where it makes the most sense for us to, to have that kind of private audience with individuals. But it's usually stakeholder roles that are very central to the work of the district, that the board or that the committee wants to make sure we have the opportunity to meet.
Thank you.
I know that went out to the board, and we'll get it to this committee as a follow-up.
It's actually really important exercise because it helps us reach out to people who are closer to the community, who can really help get the word out and make sure everyone knows about the ways in which they can participate and help us get people out to our sessions. Yusuf?
Yeah, thank you. I would just echo what board member Nyla mentioned, and since this is just one-time activity and we do have a limited time, I think it would be a good idea to use an interpreter, translator agents. So the difference that when we have other issues in the multi-language office, that might be passed to the students and stakeholders in different ways because it's ongoing thing that can be reminded, but this is just one time, and we would like to have the more input from the community so that they engage actively. So I would echo that. Thank you.
Nyla?
So I just wanted to ask another question about the community gathering. So you said you'll be working with Grace, so will y'all just be kind of the folks that are organizing the communication methods?
Yeah, so we want this group to advise us on the best channels, and Grace is really advising on all the channels that are already at the district's disposal, that the district can utilize to get the word out to as many people as possible. And we're looking at others. So I think we do want to spend some time in this meeting talking about the outreach for the community gathering. So we'll get into that, Nyla, in a moment. We really want this group's suggestions, and we want you to know that Grace has told us, she's already thinking through, she's aware of the timeline and is working to make sure that everything is organized and goes out as efficiently as possible.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to see if, because obviously how rigorous the timeline is. I just want, if we're asking for something like a YouTube, right? Like who would do the YouTube and who would like do that? So I guess that's something just to think about if we're looking to go different avenues, like how much work it would take. And yeah, even if it's more accessibility, like who's going to be able to do that and how would that be done? So just something to think about.
That makes sense.
Can I ask another question? Can I just ask, the hours that you'll be doing focus groups, what are you looking at as far as hours? Because you know what I'm saying, the times that those focus groups are taking place, what time of the day are you looking at? Is it like just during the day, afternoons? Because that's also like can be a barrier for our multilingual families. Hence, that's why you see all my events are usually 6 p.m. or later, because that's when my family.
So the community gatherings, which are for the parents and families, will be in the evenings, typically from 6 to 8 p.m. on the 30th and 31st. During the day, from 8 to 5 is when we're meeting with teachers, principals, staff, community partners, union leaders, folks like that. So we will want to kind of have a space where people can come to us during the day. We'll work with Sarah and Grace to invite and fill up our calendars with those folks. And then we will, Sarah, did we pick a location for the community gatherings yet?
I'll check with Grace, but the focus groups will be in central office so that we have space to run concurrent rooms, because there'll be more than one person here.
Yeah. And then we'll likely transition for the community gathering space.
I assume we'll also provide childcare at these meetings. Or maybe that's something that.
Grace. Usually it's like
Grace talked about childcare and food.
Yes.
Food. We need to have those two. Childcare and food are essential.
I know
for the
where
community gatherings.
I know where you guys can contract a chef. Just let me know. I will have that information. She makes really good food. I swear to you.
I would like her name as well. Great.
So we'll get that spreadsheet out to you after this meeting. Definitely want your input. Thinking about who all we should connect with during our time there. And if we can't make it happen during the day in person, again, we can reserve some time for a virtual conversation sometime afterwards.
And we're going to have some more time to speak to we want to have a whole long discussion about planning for community input. So we're going to move there in just a moment. But first wanted to talk about how community input will support the process. There are three important ways in which the insight that we gather from our conversations will be used to support our entire screening search process. The first is that you all will utilize the information gathered in this community engagement process to really inform and strengthen the job profile, the role description. So we'll use that insight to really to get organized around what are the top skills required and what are going to be some of the top priorities even for the superintendent once they're here. The next thing is that people will share some of their experiences, things that demonstrate the kinds of things they're hoping for the next superintendent. And so we want to leverage those examples as we're thinking about competency-based interview questions and interview activities. So we might take examples to help craft, to help think about the kinds of scenarios that the superintendent might encounter to present, scenarios that don't have an easy right or wrong answer. That allows the candidate to help us know a little bit more about their values and how they make decisions on behalf of their students. So we will utilize that information in that way as well. And then finally, we are hoping that we will have an open process at the finalist stage where broader community can have the opportunity to engage with finalists. So we'll be able to talk more about that. And then we would want community input to be provided to the board, to the committee, as you all are discussing the candidates and how they did at the finalist stage. So those are the different ways in which we will utilize community input. What we wanted to do is to open it up now for a broader discussion, and we have these 4 guiding questions. We want to understand first, what are the best ways to make sure we've got all the communities that we want to engage identified? So we can share a little bit about the spreadsheet that Sylvia is going to share with you all. We want to hear from you all what you're hoping that we will learn or better understand because we did the community engagement. So we want to talk about that. And we want to know what you think about how we'll know that we've successfully engaged the community throughout the process. We also want to know if there are any existing meetings, things that are already occurring that you think we could potentially participate in or attend to be able to get in touch with members of the community. Sometimes it's hard to get people to come to us, but maybe we can go to them and where they are. So anyway, we can go any one of these. We can go straight from the top to bottom, or if there's something that someone wants to speak more specifically to, we'll turn it over to the group for discussion.
How is Portland empowered? Has any meetings coming up? Is Grace thinking about that? I think of shared space cafes and places.
We have one coming up, Deering, coming up at the end of this month. That's actually built-in connections, like how to get parents more involved with Deering. So I know that multilingual is doing with Portland Empowered at the end of this month. I do know that, at least for the Spanish speakers, we have a large portion that are Christian and are very, very connected to their church, where it's basically, and I have very strong connections with the pastors here, where I use their spaces. When I need to get a lot of information out, I will usually show up there on Sunday after their service. He's offered his space, so that is, a good way to engage a huge portion of the Spanish speakers with that pastor. So I think definitely church leaders would be very good for at least the Spanish speakers.
Do you think we'd be able to get, let's see, some, maybe in the announcements how they have the pamphlets that they print every week, for every Sunday mass, or even a community announcement. Sometimes the pastors will share some of the things happening, maybe the weekend before we're there. Do you think that's something you've done before?
Yeah. I do all the time. I use Sacred Heart, which is one of our big churches here. They have a huge, community, multilingual community. So I'll usually let them know, and Sister Patricia basically is involved with everyone there. She announces it at the Mass on top of it. And then with the other church, it's the same thing. I mean, I go, he invites me. He's like, do you need anything announced? And that's how I've been getting this massive amount of people coming to all of our stuff. So I definitely can do that for sure. For those two places.
That would be great.
That's I don't know about anybody else. But I'm sure we can talk to my colleagues, and they are very involved in the mosque. So we can definitely have connections there. Yeah, we definitely can do a lot of outreach as far as religious institutions, for sure.
Yeah, one of the things I'm thinking of is, I just looked to see if I can pull it up, but we have a list of community organizations, which is broader than just religious organizations, where we often will send job postings. And so,
justice.
yeah, exactly. So maybe that would be a helpful place, same thing, to be able to get postings up about things that are happening.
Yes, there's some hands up.
Yusuf?
Yes, thank you. I will just, the team in the office just mentioned the main points, the community organizations. There are a lot of community organizations run by immigrant community and by BOC, and also the religion places, mosque and church. I would also add the community leaders in general. Sometimes you may have a president of Congolese community, president of Sudanese community, president of Somalis community. Those are also nonprofit organizations, and they do have deep connection with families, and usually they support them with the language barrier and all of this. So those are also could be a good way to connect to the community. Yeah, thank you.
That would be great. And I think, was that Barbara who was mentioning the list of community organizations?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we want to do is, if there's a way for you to either get that to us or add it into the list, I think what we'd like to do is to try to get something out to all of those groups by next week, if we can, because we'll already be close to 2 weeks from our visit. It's just going to happen so fast. So I think that would be fantastic to have that support there.
Just want to add, for settlements, the due date you have on is the 6th. If you can extend that so that more input can be added until next week. Thank you.
Sure thing. We can do that.
I think too.
Was someone saying something in the room?
Go ahead, Nyla.
Oh, Nyla?
Thank you. I wanted to add to what Yusuf was saying about the community organizations. Almost every immigrant community or tribe has their own community organization or nonprofit. They could be a really good way to do some of that video survey, because they can hold their own meetings with their own community and kind of funnel the survey that way. That's a way we can utilize them, so we don't have to necessarily create the video. They can kind of funnel that work virtually if they need to. And then another place that I think we should just at least post the survey, just an accessible version of it, is Portland public housing complexes. A lot of people have access to the center. A lot of people go to there because now some Portland public houses or housing complexes have Greater Portland Health, which is a clinic, and a lot of them go to that clinic. So that could be a good place just to post surveys for their members that come, because it's in the complex. So the people that live there go to that place. And then Boys and Girls Club is also a good way. You can give it to the Boys and Girls Club, and they can have kids send it home with them for their parents to fill out. So that's also another avenue. But
I was just going to say that I think that's how one indicator of how we're going to know if we're being successful is that we just have a lot of different pathways to get this out into the community. So we're not just depending on internal communications because we know that'll get a lot, but just that it is multifaceted across the community.
I'd like us to think about ways to get the surveys to people who are filling parental roles for kids, but are not necessarily family members. So the teen center, social workers from Child Protective Services, the other folks that are, overseeing the parental responsibilities for students and might have important information for us to consider.
That could also include pre-K partners that we have.
Any other thoughts on other existing meetings or community engagement opportunities that maybe we should attend or?
There are, I think, weekly. I don't know if they're weekly. They might be monthly BIPOC meetings of like BIPOC staff, community members that Julia Hazel puts on. I think she works for the multilingual department. I'm not sure actually. I think she's at central office.
She is at central office and she's part of HR.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, things that are weekly like that are great for us to join. And, whenever is respectful with their planned agendas, especially if we can do it virtually, very easy for us to join. But if it happens to be occurring on that Monday or Tuesday when we'll be there, January 30th or 31st, we can just build it right into our schedule when we're there.
There's also a staff LGBTQIA affinity group that meets, and so that would be another thing to consider. Yeah.
And Sylvia and Monica, so in terms of like staff that are super specialized within the district, do you want those folks on this spreadsheet as well? Is that where you want them captured? Or is the spreadsheet that you sent that will come to this group as well, is that more for like external people?
Can you give us an example of someone that's super specialized?
Yeah, so Julia Hazel would be a great example, but she's somebody that works within central office. There's multiple folks like that I can think of. And, even in the schools, there are folks that may hold like a very specific role. And I wasn't sure if you want those people on this sheet or if they're getting captured someplace else.
So no, I don't think they're being captured anywhere else. So I think it's great to include them and just put in the notes to clarify why you're suggesting them. Maybe there's someone you think we should meet and we might pull together a focus group of individuals like that, or they may be people who host meetings like what you're describing that we can try to connect with to see if we can join one of their meetings. So, just clarify the perspective that they bring and or the ways in which they can support the process. We'd love to have all those names. You can't give us too many names. So, yeah, definitely. That's great. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about what you're hoping that we'll learn through the community engagement process. And maybe a good way to describe this is what are the kinds of questions you think that we should be asking? And I'm just going to stop sharing so we can see each other a little bit better. What are the kinds of questions you think we should be asking? What is it that you're hoping we're going to learn from the community when we're out there talking with people?
And Monica, just really quickly, we're at time, I'm realizing. It's already 8:00. I can't believe it. So do we want to go for a little, see if people can stay for a little bit longer, or what do you think makes the most sense?
So sorry, somehow we had it at 8:30 on our schedule. But we're willing to stay, but also to be respectful of people's time. We actually did get through the top, all of the top things on our list here. So whatever, I think we should respect the time that we have scheduled so that people don't have to leave and miss. So yeah.
Not to interrupt, Monica, but I had it in my calendar as a 2-hour meeting as well, 6:30 to 8:30.
No, I had it.
I had 8 too.
The invite went out as 6:30 to 8:30.
Odd. I think there was probably some wires crossed somewhere. Do folks can you raise your Zoom hand if you are okay to stay until 8:30?
Sorry, I missed what was happening. I went to the bathroom.
There was a little confusion if we were scheduled to end at 8 or at 8:30. So we're trying to figure out who thought the meeting was till 8:30 and who thought the meeting was till 8.
I'm fine going till 8:30.
Okay. You know what? I think we should pause just because I think there are people that do need to go. So if I know that we'll be meeting frequently, so I'm hopeful we could make up the rest of this content, and I'll make sure that our times and technology are super tight moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, no problem. And we really did, Sylvia, I think we covered that last set of questions was really what's most important. We're going to be working with Sarah to confirm our next meeting time. So be on the lookout for that. And we're expecting to meet about every other week throughout this process. And we'll be there with you in Portland before you know it. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time this evening and for all of your dedication and helping us to plan such a thoughtful process. We really appreciate it. I do see 2 hands raised. Matthew and Nylat, anything you wanted to add in there?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, get us to also think about how large the focus groups are, and if they're going to be like really large or really small, or like depending on what the scale is, ensuring that we have all like the checkpoints, like, you know, we're not being ageist, we're not being like, we have some young folks, we have some older folks, we have some ableist or folks that are experiencing ableism, some folks that represent like LGBT communities. So just having a sense of grasp of our community in that room is I guess what I'm trying to say. So if it does become a situation where we have to scale the people there, I would really like for us to prioritize those folks that would make up the community.
Definitely. And that's a real top priority for us, is to have well-represented communities, and especially marginalized communities, as we were saying earlier. So definitely, as you're adding names onto the list, think with that in mind as well. The focus groups tend to be 12 to 15 in a group, and we would love that support in thinking about the makeup of the group to ensure they represent every part of Portland, every neighborhood, every part of Portland. Certainly that the rich diversity that makes up Portland. We're excited to get to meet with people. So we'll be looking for that all across the board and appreciate that push. Great. All right. Sarah, any final words there?
Just look out for emails. That's it. Have a good night.
Have a great night, everyone. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.